Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm Erin Keating, your host, and I'm here and glad to be co-hosting with Lucas McCann. Hello.
Hello, Erin.
Good to see you
Good to
in
see you as well.
person over the weekend, as well here virtually. So exciting. And then we've been waiting a while to talk to this guest, David Peckinpaugh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for being here with us from St. Louis, right?
St. Louis.
Can't miss that arch.
Yeah,
Arch right here.
We've got a lot, it's so interesting that we're finally getting to speak with you. And I say that just because we've had so many different episodes. And of course, as you can imagine, in the associations world, events have been the number one conversation, but we haven't actually spoken with someone who works specifically in events since we've had this series. We've had people who work in and around events, sponsorships and things like that, but not someone who's actually been at the core of the crisis. And so we're really excited to hear from you. You are CEO of Maritz, is that correct?
President of Maritz Global Events. Yep.
Maritz Global Events. So maybe if you could just really quickly, not that anyone doesn't know who Maritz Global Events is, but for those strangers over there in Wisconsin who maybe don't know it, will you let us know what is Maritz Global Events?
So Maritz Global Events, we're part of a holding company called Maritz Holdings. And we are the company that is focused on the event and incentive industry. I describe our company as an experience design company that happens to focus in on meetings, incentives, trade shows, and the event industry. And that's really what we do. It's all about how do we design and execute and deliver experiences that help our customers transform their businesses.
Yeah, and of all the businesses, and I come from event background, so my heart broke when I saw so many of the former people that we used to work with who were all out of business. I'm just curious, how did, everyone talked about the big pivot, but you were the actual organization who had to handle the cancellations of all the events that you were managing, and then helping those companies figure out, are they going to reorganize quickly and do something digitally? How do you repurpose what you have? I'm sure money and refunds and all these things come involved. So maybe give us a day in the life of what it was like for you all to sort of try to manage that transition.
Yeah, it was pretty nightmarish. I mean, there's no other way to put it. If you think about a business that basically was outlawed, I mean, if you think about government regulations, you weren't allowed to gather 50 or more, and at some point 10 or more.
right.
That's basically our business. We're in the business of gathering people together. And so from March, whatever the date was, March 10th on, our business really has been outlawed. And so when it comes to a screeching halt, it's not like any kind of economic downturn or other crisis. I mean, it is just a hard stop. We lost 86% of our revenue for the fiscal year. We have an interesting fiscal year. It starts April 1. So our fiscal 20 ended up just fine because the impact was just really the last couple of weeks of March. But, our volume is such, we do about 9,500 events a year, and they cross the association space, corporate, for-profit trade show, and live events, which we define as marathons, sporting events, e-gaming, all fall into sort of the live event category, which has gotten actually a different meaning now, I think, as we've gone through the pandemic.
Yeah.
But what we were faced with is just massive cancellations and or postponements. I think initially, everyone was really focused on postponing and finding new dates. But then as this pandemic went on, and I think, if you went back a year ago, we thought by September we'd be back to normal, right? That was the sense, I think, across the industry and really across the US. Quickly became apparent 60 days into it that was not going to be the case. So what we've had to go through is wave after wave after wave of postponements and or cancellations. So it's doubled or tripled the amount of work that our team, which is greatly reduced, unfortunately, because of the impact of the crisis. It has just been really nightmarish in many ways. So the pressure on the team that was left has been immense. We had to make a lot of the decisions that unfortunately a lot of other companies had to make, which was furloughs and pay reductions. Fortunately, we're now on the other side of that and starting to really see recovery. But during that period, it was all hands on deck, and it was, I hate to use a battle term, but it was hand-to-hand combat. I mean, every single day was dealing with our personnel issues, dealing with client issues, working with the hotels that, in our facilities, which were decimated. many
Right.
instances couldn't even get anyone to return a phone call
Right.
because no one was there. They'd shuttered the property. So it was, the term like no other is really appropriate. And that's our tagline as a company. We didn't really mean it to apply to
Right.
a worldwide pandemic, but it was certainly like no other.
We've been riding the ride with our client associations as well, and there's been a big focus on the monetary impact and the operations. What do you think, David, is the cultural impact for some of your associations specifically?
Yeah, and I think it's a huge challenge, but also is a huge opportunity. I think what we try to do, I always use sort of the scales of justice, right? We tried to keep our one side balanced with what we had to do to really get through the crisis, survival, right?
Yep.
All the tough decisions around people and events, but on the other side, keep the focus on the through the windshield, right? Keep looking ahead and see the opportunity that certainly exists in any kind of crisis. And I think that's what I would encourage all of our association customers. And what we did is keep that dialogue about how do you make the best of this.
Right.
Everyone has to adapt. We had to adapt to the digital environment, had to adapt to hybrid, which many organizations had done prior, but many had not. So
Right.
there was that huge adaptation that had to go on. And then look at how do you use this as an accelerator for your culture? How do you use this as an accelerator for member engagement? And I think the organizations that took that approach and hopefully allowed us to partner with them to
Mhm.
really drive that approach paid dividends because that opportunity was there. The ability, I think the standard data was less than 50% of membership ever attends a live event, and that was before a pandemic. I think the data was really more like 37%. So the opportunity to talk to a much wider range of a membership or a stakeholder group was truly accelerated during this pandemic. And I think that's one of the lasting positive impacts that this will have.
Yeah, agreed. I know we've talked, outside of this, sort of teeing up this episode of 6 Degrees, and you've shared your confidence in moving forward. I know a lot of our association clients are now scheduling things for September, October, a lot of fourth quarter. What are you seeing from your end?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going over our data report. We created a recovery dashboard as of the end of last March. And so our data analytics team has been monitoring this since that time. And so we've been monitoring all kinds of not only our internal, like RFP data and financial data, but exterior data, external data like TSA data, airline booking data,
Mm-hmm.
US tourism data, et cetera. And it clearly shows in a calendar year format, Q3 and Q4 recovery,
Yeah.
starting middle of Q3, but then really picking up in Q4. For our fiscal year, it's a little different. It's our Q3 and our Q3 and Q4 of our fiscal year, which is a little different timing. But I think as you get into the fall, that's really when you're going to see an uptick. The biggest challenge is going to be availability,
Yeah.
right? The hotel community has embraced leisure. Leisure is what's really helping
Right.
them recover. Business travel will start layering in on that, and then after business travel comes group. And so we're counseling our customers and a lot of our associations that may still be looking at holding an event they haven't booked. Availability is going to be a huge issue, and then compression issues and everything else as far as who will attend, who won't, what are the actual numbers going to look like. It's going to be quite a mix, I think, for the next 6 to 12 months.
I'm curious with as large as you guys are, and you mentioned that some of your clients had done hybrid events before the pandemic without knowing that that was coming. But knowing live events are very different from digital events, and the upskilling of talent both ways to be able to handle what you need to do to produce an event live versus to have the technological skills to produce it digitally and the
Mhm.
bandwidth, if you will, the true bandwidth, internet bandwidth, not just bandwidth of people.
Right.
I'm curious how Maritz has done this because I think it would resonate with a lot of other organizations who may not, have this particular challenge, but in this, people's jobs have shifted and rotated, and new skills might need to become applicable. How are you all handling, bringing back people maybe who were primarily on your live shows and having to repurpose them in the digital space? Or is this actually creating a bigger opportunity to have large workforces in both areas because you might be doing a lot more hybrid where you're having to have both skill sets?
Exactly. We did a couple things. First of all, we were I want to say 100%, but highly focused on the in-person live event, whether it's an event, a trade show, an incentive trip. It was all about being there in person. So when this happened, and we were like many organizations, okay, now we have to adapt. And so the first thing we did is our design studio, which is our experience design practice, and gave the challenge to that team. You now have to make the adaptation
Right.
to a digital environment. And they were amazing at how they quickly adapted. Out of that, then came work on a technology assessment in the marketplace. So we didn't want to own or build a technology platform. So we needed to go out and find the right one. And we found three, sort of a simple, medium, and uh, advanced platform opportunities that we could then bring to market. And we've created two digital teams. So we have an entire digital practice now that a year ago never existed. The other thing we then did is put that team and our meeting and event managers through DES training, digital experience specialist training.
Mm.
And that was offered through PCMA.
Okay.
I can't remember the number, 45 or 50 people we put through that training last spring. So it
Great.
was about how do we adapt? How do we create the practice so we have the foundation? And we were committed to the fact that this is not just a short-term issue. This will be part of our business moving forward.
Right.
Digital is going to be part of the experience. And I think the one thing it's elevated is this idea of, look, an event is an event. And it's the mix of the event that you have to determine through the proper design. Is it going to be 100% virtual? Is it going to be some type of hybrid? Is it going to be 100% digital?
Right.
And that really comes out of design. And that's what we're really good at, is that design practice, which will then ultimately determine how do you deliver the content and the experience that you want to deliver.
Right. Yeah. You guys have sort of these three simple steps, I think you call them, for creating success at an event. I think it's excited attendees, happy exhibitors, and profitable, right? Biggest key. Which one of those do you think was the biggest challenge in the digital space, and how did you sort of make that, turn?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the for-profit or the trade show experience was the one that suffered the most. And I can tell you, we've scoured the marketplace. We have our own offering around a digital trade show experience. It works, and it works decently. But I think the universal feedback, and we've already gone live with a number of trade shows already, dating back to last November, very successfully, very safely, with the right protocols in place. But it goes back to that experience of a live trade show, and it is so hard to replicate.
Yeah.
Whether you're using AI, AR, any kind of 3D technology, it's a stopgap, and I'm sure it's going to get better as innovation takes hold.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say of those three, the trade show experience is the one that has had the most difficult time adapting to the digital environment.
Yeah, I would agree. Having gone to countless of those in the past, and then moving through the digital period in the last 12 months, it leaves me really wanting to get back to the live experience and experience both being an excited attendee and a happy exhibiter. So I'm looking forward to both of those in the fall.
And I'm sure this will evolve, but I think the desire to get back into that live environment in all cases, but particularly in the trade show space, I think is going to be front and center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keeping people grounded in the experience when it's all digital, I think can be such a challenge. And I do think, though, the opportunity for hybrid, where they can, if people, and I'm sure you're already seeing this, and you guys have probably already designed some amazing experiences around it. I remember in 2016, I did an event where we couldn't have all 40,000 people we needed in the city that we were doing the main event. So we had 8,000 in the main event city, but then we had all the rest of them connected through movie theaters. And, it was a matter of, like, the most stressful part was, how do you most adequately make the people who are not at the real experience feel engaged with the experience that's really happening, and create that excitement with your audience. And I actually loved that challenge and thought it was so cool to kind of try to think through, how would I be able to test it, to go to a different city and, see it. I'm just curious, have there been any new innovations that you've seen, or anything that you're excited about, that have helped starting to create that way of connecting a virtual experience with a live audience?
There are a number of really great innovations that have come out that I think impacts that sort of hub and spoke deployment model. And I think hub and spoke is another one that is going to be here to stay. We're doing it ourselves for our sales conference this fall.
Yeah.
Instead of bringing everybody together, we're going to do a hub and spoke, and that's going to work just fine. But you do have the challenge of if your speakers are all concentrated in one area and you have to broadcast, it is a different experience. So
Yeah.
a lot of different, physically there are different ways to do it. You can disperse your speakers, right? So they're often in various locations, so everyone has that sense of the live presentation. There's some great technologies that we've partnered with that create that engagement. There's, and I probably don't want to name them by name, but there's some really good ones out there that, we did a month-long digital event called Next in February, and we introduced one of those technology partners. And it was a great way for us to deliver content and then go off into individual conversations. So you had that more one-on-one or small group engagement. Breakout rooms is certainly one way to do it, but this other technology about one-on-one engagement is great. And then I think, you mentioned how do you really make sure that the audience is, and to me it's engagement more than anything.
Sure.
And you can get great numbers on a digital event, but how many are multitasking, how many have the event running and they're off doing email? So the idea of engagement and measuring engagement is something that we've spent a lot of time on, and have partnered with a California company. We're beta testing right now with a major Fortune 50 technology company, and we're really encouraged about the results of that. And that will allow, in any kind of environment, for us to measure and monitor engagement during the life cycle of an event. And that's all at an opt-in. It's not Big Brother-ish, but it's all opt-in, and it's through wearables, and it's pretty exciting technology advancements. So there are all kinds of different ways, I think, to get around it. I'm probably old dog, old tricks. There's still nothing that beats the live experience and all of us being together, but we know that's not going to be the case. And so we've got to make the best of it. And there's some really good innovations out there to make the best of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And thank you, David and Maritz, for sort of leading the charge on that technology front, innovation front. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's our role, right? That's why we're here. We've been here 127 years, and we plan to be here for that and many more.
And just so I'm just now making the connection, because given that most of our audience is associations, PCMA is an association, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a great example of an association going, okay, how do we pivot in the middle of this area where now we need to be upskilling or training people differently in a whole new field of way of doing things. So it's awesome to know that they put together a program fast.
Their DES certification just went through the roof. They had a great year, and rightly so.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you, David. I could talk about it. Given my experience in events, I could talk to you for hours about it. But I know we want to leave a little bit on the table for people to go and look up Maritz Global Events and talk to you. But before we go, we always end the show getting a recommendation from our guest on who we might speak with next that our audience would really benefit from hearing.
Yeah, I want to pick on this gentleman. His name is Michael Guerrero.
Okay.
President of Digitel, which is a digital platform that has actually been one of the pioneers in this space. They've been in the association space for well over a decade. Jim Parker, who's the founder and owner, is someone I've known for quite a while. And Michael was part of our company for 29 years and joined Digitel last summer.
Cool.
And I think would bring a really unique perspective to this whole discussion about the future of events, the role digital is going to play, and Michael's a great guy as well. So that could be a really good conversation.
Awesome.
Great.
Great.
We look forward to talking to him then. Well, thank you, David, for being
Thanks,
here.
Aaron.
Lucas, good to see you again as always.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, David.
Appreciate it.
All right.